The next thing we're going to talk about is the basic properties of objects. So we've got these two rectangles now, and we want to look at the different things that we can modify with respect to these rectangles. So I have this right-hand rectangle selected. I'm going to go up to the object menu, and I'm going to open up the fill and stroke panel, and that's going to appear on my right hand side. So these are the different properties that this object has with respect to the fill and the stroke. So what we see for the fill, that's the hue, saturation, and lightness that we're filling the object with, and we can modify that. If we want to just change the lightness, we can drag right here. If we want to change the saturation, we can change that here. So one of the principles that we talked about in class with respect to color is that you probably want to come up with a basic palette of colors, probably a minimal palette of colors, 2 or 3 colors that make up your basic design. And then throughout you can modify the saturation and the lightness to provide some alternatives to either emphasize or de-emphasize different aspects of your design. So the hue itself is specified here, so that's the 0. And then we can modify these. So if we wanted to have one of the rectangles lighter, the other one darker, that can provide some sort of differentiation between these objects. The other aspect of the fill is the opacity. So if we wanted something to be semi-transparent, we can change the opacity, and then if we were to lay these on top of one another, then we'd be able to see through to the object below it. The definition of what object is on top can be changed with these buttons up here. So we can lower an object below another, and now we see that that transparency isn't showing anymore. So if we want to bring that up again, we can bring that up above that other object. If you have a number of objects around one another, you can use raise to the top, so that'll take this object and bring it all the way to the top. So if you've got 7 different boxes surrounding one another, you can pick one and raise it all the way to the top. So again, be thinking about scatter plots and bar graphs, and the individual pieces of those visualizations are the kind of things that we can modify with these properties. So if we want to change the border of an object, so that's what's referred to as a stroke. So this object right now has no stroke, it's see-through. So if I wanted to give it a stroke, so let's just do a black stroke for now. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold down the shift key and you can pick the stroke. And then so we'll go back to our red by clicking. So shift key to pick the stroke, click, shift and click for stroke, click to get the fill. So now we have a stroke on the outside of our object, and we want to go to the stroke style in order to change the size of it. So we want our stroke opacity to be 100%, and that changes the fill as well. So alpha level is the way you can change them individually. I'll go into that in a minute. So I want to look at the stroke size. So that defines how much on the outside we have. So let's give ourselves a white fill so that way we can see the stroke a little bit better. So this is going to be black stroke. So what are we missing? There we go. So our alpha level was down to 0, so that's why we weren't seeing it. So we see that we've got a stroke of 5. So now if we look at our object, we've got a 5-point stroke around the outside. If we want to change that stroke maybe a little bit smaller, so let's drop it down to a 1. You can see how that impacts that object if we want to make it a lot larger. And this is just a way that you can emphasize objects or de-emphasize them by changing that stroke level. So let's bring this down to about a 3. So now let's talk about what we looked at earlier, which is ambience versus opacity. So opacity is a property of the object. So if you lower the opacity, you're going to change the see-through component of the whole object, both the fill and the stroke. So the ambience is the way you can change one or the other. So let's go back to a red fill, and we're going to lower the ambience of that. But now what we see is that we still have that that stroke around the outside. So that's how you manipulate those individually. So let's see, we've looked at fill and stroke, we've looked at how you bring something to the top. The other thing that I like to or need to do quite often is to align objects. So if I make a copy of this guy and put him over here, what I want to do is be able to align all of these objects together. So I might want to align them to this guide, but I may also just want to align them with respect to one another. So I, on a PC, am going to hold the Shift key, and then I can click multiple objects. And then if I go to my object menu and align and distribute, that's how I will be able to lay out these objects with respect to one another. So the relative to specifies how, based on your order of selecting them, you want to work. So typically what I'll do is I'll either pick first selected or last selected. So the last selected object was this box. So now if I align to the top edge, those other objects will all align with that object. So it looks like they're all different sizes. So the other thing we could do is we could align to the center. And then if we wanted, we could align them to the left, but that just stacks them on top of one another. So let's spread these guys back out. So again, so last selected, if I select the one in the middle last, then I align the tops, they'll all align to that object. So that's the way that they work together in terms of alignment. With them all selected, now I can move them around as a group. The other thing I have the option of doing is when I have a visualization that's already designed, I want to probably move it around as a group all the time. So if I grab any piece of it and drag it, I want it to all move. You really probably wouldn't want your bar graph, if you clicked on one of the bars and dragged, you wouldn't want that to go by itself. So what you can do is you can make them into a group. So back to the object menu, you can go Control G, and that makes them a group. So now it doesn't matter which one I grab, they all move together. So the alternative is Shift Control G, and that breaks them back apart. So when we talk about our integration later, we're going to export one of our ggplot charts out to an SVG, and it's going to come grouped already, and we're going to want to break it apart if we want to manipulate individual pieces. So that's the basics of moving stuff around. So again, let's Shift, click, click. We're going to, based on the last selected, we're going to align the tops, and then we're going to Control G, or as we showed earlier from the menu, we're going to make those a group, so that way when we move them around, they'll all move together. So let's Control G, and then if we drag them, we can snap that to the grid lines that we made earlier. Now we have our objects aligned on the screen. So let's review. We talked about fill and stroke. So these two objects have an outer stroke which is black, and it's, I believe, a 3-point stroke that we defined. You can't see those properties anymore now that they're a group. If you wanted to change them, you would have to break them up. So again, that's the Shift Control G to break them up individually. This guy has that red hue. And again, you can match the hues of your different objects and then change the saturation and the lightness individually. So let's break these back up again so we can see that. So I'm going to select this left-hand object. So here's where you change your saturation and your lightness. So again, if I want to make this lighter without changing the hue, again, I can just drag this guy right here, make that a little bit lighter. If I want a little less saturation, I can, go towards grayscale. This way. So what you can do is, pick some hues that you like, maybe based on the presets from the visualizations, or maybe it's from Color Brewer or Cooler, which is another alternative from Adobe. Pick your color scale, and this is how you would manipulate it. And then we talked about how to align things with the align and distribute. The other thing you can do that I didn't talk about, so if I have these three objects, you can space them evenly, and that's the distribute panel. So you can either distribute them based on their right hand side, their center, or you can top bottom distribute them, again, either via their centers or via one of the edges. So those are the basic tools with which to manipulate the color, size of stroke, and move things around, group them on screen. So I think I'm gonna break there, and we'll come back and what will we talk about next? Let's get an actual R visualization into this, and we can see how we can start to integrate that into our visualization on this poster. Thanks.